Outer voice counterpoint between bass and soprano forms the basis of common practice tonal music, but two voices alone are not enough to create a full harmonic texture. For this, we need to add inner voices. While you can theoretically fill in the space between bass and soprano with any number of voices, tonal music is generally conceived in four voices: soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. Four-voice frameworks underlie large compositions, such as symphonies or concertos, as well as small compositions, such as solos and duets. There are two ways to write in four voices. The first is chorale style, which puts the four voices on two staffs, with the soprano and alto on the top staff, and the tenor and bass on the bottom staff. The soprano and tenor are stemmed upwards, and the alto and bass are stemmed downwards. The second way to write four voices is keyboard style, with the bass alone in the lower staff and three notes stemmed together in the top staff. Keyboard style is meant to be played on the piano, while chorale style is meant to be sung by a choir or vocal quartet. Let's start by looking at how to write a single chord in chorale style. Say that we are in A major and we want to write a one chord. We always start with the bass, which will be an A since the chord is in root position. But which A? The bass voice has a range that defines what notes are possible. The lowest note that bass singers should be asked to sing is a D below the staff, and the highest note that they should be asked to sing is middle C. Notice that the bass's range fits comfortably within the staff when there's a bass clef. This is why it's called bass clef. So that leaves us with two possible A's to put in the bass. One of these is better than the other, because even though the bass can sing all the notes in its range, it is usually more comfortable in a specific subset of that range. This subset is called the tessitura, and ranges from the E below the staff to the G below middle C. You should try as much as possible to keep your bass voice within its tessitura. So that means that the A toward the bottom of the staff is the best choice for the bass. Each of the four voices has its own range and tessitura. The soprano voice should never go below middle C and can theoretically hit a high A, but it should usually stay on the staff in its tessitura. The alto voice's range is lower, as is its tessitura. The tenor sits at the top of or above the bass clef staff, and its tessitura is mostly above the staff with ledger lines. Now let's finish writing our A major chord. We've got our A bass note in the best octave. This is a triad, so there are only three notes in the chord, but we're writing four voices. This means that one of the three notes will be doubled in two voices. The best note to double is the root, so our four voices will be root, third, fifth, and another root. After the bass note, we should write the soprano note since the outer voice counterpoint is the most important. Since we're doubling the root, the soprano can have any chord tone, root, third, or fifth. Let's give the soprano the third. The best choice based on the soprano's tessitura is the C sharp an octave above middle C. Don't forget to stem this note up to leave room for the alto. The inner voices fill in the remaining notes to create a full-sounding chord. Since we already have root and third, we're going to need the fifth, which is E, and we're going to double the root, which is A. There are two good ways to do this. With the tenor on A at the top of the staff and the alto on E at the bottom of the staff, or with the tenor above the staff on E and the alto right below the soprano on A. If we put the tenor on E an octave lower with the alto up top, this creates a spacing problem. The alto and tenor are too far apart from each other. In general, you should keep adjacent upper voices no more than an octave apart. I say upper voices because it's okay for the bass to be very far away from the tenor. It's also okay for the tenor and soprano to be more than an octave apart, just as long as the adjacent voices are within an octave. So we put the tenor on this E and the alto on a lower A, then we have two problems. There's more than an octave between soprano and alto, and the tenor is on a higher note than the alto. This is called voice crossing, and it is not okay. Now pause the video and write the following 1 and 5 chords in 4-voice chorale style. Keep each voice within its tessitura, double the root, do not have more than one octave between adjacent voices, and do not cross voices. In keyboard style, you should write the bass alone in the left hand and the other three voices in the right hand. The bass should generally stay within the same range as in chorale style, though of course any note on the keyboard is a theoretical possibility. The three upper voices shouldn't stray too far from the treble clef staff and should all be within 1 octave. This is to ensure that the three upper voices are all playable with the right hand. For a root position chord, it's best to have the entire triad in the right hand such that the root is doubled. Pause the video again and write out the same chords as before in keyboard style. Writing single chords is just the first step to writing chord progressions. When you write a series of chords in 4 voices, you must follow good voice leading. The main rule of good voice leading is that all voices that aren't the bass should move from chord to chord by the smallest interval possible. While the bass often contains large leaps, upper voices should primarily move by step, or, if that's not possible, by third. So let's try to write a 5-1 progression in F minor. The first step, as always, is to write the outer voice counterpoint. Our bass line is of course going to be C-F, in the bass's tessitura, and let's put the leading tone E natural resolving to F in the soprano. Now let's fill in the 5 chord with inner voices. We can put a G in the alto and double the C in the tenor. Now what we need to do is fill in the 1 chord so that the alto and tenor move by small intervals and so that we have a complete chord. The tenor's C can remain on C for the next chord. The alto's G could move by step to either F or A flat. But looking at the notes we have in this chord, we notice that we already have 2 Fs and a C, but no A flat. So the alto must go to A flat here. So here we have a 5-1 progression with good voice leading. We could follow the same procedure to write in keyboard style. Here, what was previously the tenor part would be the middle voice of the right-hand chords. Now for a few hard and fast voice leading rules. First, the leading tone must resolve up by step if it is in the soprano voice. If the leading tone is in the alto or tenor voice, it should resolve up by step if possible, but it is sometimes better not to. For example, let's say we want to write a 5-1 progression in G major with the soprano line going A to G. We can fill in the first 5 chord with an F sharp in the alto and a D in the tenor. The D in the tenor needs to go down to B so that we have the third of the 1 chord, but then if we resolve the leading tone F sharp up by step to G, our final 1 chord has 3 Gs and a B, and it's missing a D. We actually have 2 options here. What's shown is actually okay. While it's generally better to write complete chords, it is permissible for a chord to omit its 5th if it makes the voice leading smoother. You can of course never omit a chord's root or third. Now our other option is that we can take the alto's F sharp and instead of resolving it up by step, have it jump down by third to D, making a complete 1 chord. Although this means that the leading tone doesn't resolve correctly, because this occurs in an inner voice, it's not so noticeable. Rule number 2. Never double the leading tone. You should try to double the root of a chord as much as possible, but sometimes this is not possible while maintaining good voice leading. If you can't double the root, doubling the 5th is the second best option, and doubling the 3rd should be done only if absolutely necessary. But you may never double the 3rd of a 5 chord because it is the leading tone. Rule number 3. Parallel perfect fifths or octaves are forbidden between any pair of voices. This can be bass alto, bass tenor, tenor soprano, or any other combination. And rule number 4. Avoid voice overlaps. A voice overlap occurs when a voice moves to a note either higher than a lower voice's previous note or lower than a higher voice's previous note. Now pause the video and resolve these 5 chords to their tonic in 4 voices.